I had no idea how I was ever going to get to this point. Like, is it understatement? Hello, and welcome to the Orphic, where we're talking all things beyond ordinary understanding. I am Alyssa Sokol with Interdimensional Astrophysics, and here's Mikayla with Mariposa Moonchild. Hi.
Hello. Hello. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, everyone.
Good day.
Good day.
Happy to be here for our 5th episode.
Good
fifth
stuff. Episode already. Holy cow.
Yeah. All right, you want to start us in, do some group breathing?
Yeah, we'll do a little bit of a grounding in. Don't do this if you're driving. I'm probably going to stop saying that at some point because it's annoying, but I feel like it's just like a disclaimer because I hear on other podcast episodes or not podcast episodes, but if I do like a guided meditation, they're like, don't do this when you're driving. And
right.
I'm like, no shit.
Right.
Like, who would do this? But like, obviously people have out there. So it's like, I don't want you to sue me, so don't
sue us.
Don't sue us.
So just breathe and drive and close your eyes if you're not driving.
So if you're in a space where you're able to close your eyes, please use your own judgment and discernment if you're in that space or not. I welcome you to do that, and I welcome you to put your hand on your heart if it feels good. I welcome you to put your feet flat on the ground, and let's breathe together.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so let's start with a couple deep cleansing breaths. So bring that beautiful air into your body. Take a deep breath in all the way from your toes. Fill your lungs all the way up to the top. I want you to pause. Hold here. Open your mouth and release. Letting go of any and all negative energy that's been held in your body. And I want you to do that again. Big breath in. Fill your lungs all the way up to the top. Pause. Open your mouth and let it out. Cleansing and clearing anything stuck, anything heavy, anything that might be weighing you down, letting it all go now. I want you to do another one just like that. And I'm just going to quickly lead us through a ground in while you keep doing your own releasing breaths. Now just imagine roots growing out of your root chakra and grounding you down into the earth right now. Spiraling down into the earth, all the way to the center where they wrap around a large rose quartz crystal. Now with each breath, each inhale, I want you to bring all that beautiful white light energy from that massive rose quartz crystal up into your body, all the way up into your body, through your roots, through your root chakra, and bring it all the way up into your heart chakra. And just feel into that beautiful bright white light as it glows brighter and brighter in your heart space until it's made it a complete field, a complete aura that's completely enveloping your entire body. Now just take one more breath here and just feel into this and release anything and everything that is ready to be let go now. And when you're ready, come back to this space.
All right. That was good.
Mm-hmm.
Love grounding in.
Yeah, me too. It really centers yourself.
Definitely.
Well, first of all, should we talk about what you've been up to and how you're doing?
Yeah, I was thinking we could do that. So at the time of recording this, I did just finish my PhD. Thank you. Hey, you were there, Mikayla, on Zoom. I was so happy you were there. Yay.
In Zoom and in spirit.
Mm-hmm. And what do you think? What'd you learn? Tell us. Tell the crowd.
So funny. So I watched the whole thing. I was actually there for quite a while until the end. And then Bryce came home later and I'm like, yeah, I watched like Alyssa's thing today. And I'm like, I didn't understand a fucking thing she said. I didn't understand anything. And I said, I tried really hard because I want it in my head. I'm like, oh, like maybe I can learn something and maybe this will like maybe I can follow a little bit. Like maybe I'm actually smarter than I think I am. And like,
Wrong.
Like the first slide, the first getting into it, I'm like, ooh, like I'd like way gone, way over my head. I still sat and like listened, but like, I mean, a PhD, like that's pretty fucking smart.
It got pretty complicated, definitely by, well, I don't know, I'm biased, but yeah, I mean, well, the first slide was like a one of those pictures of the evolution of the whole universe since the Big Bang, and just
yeah. I kind of followed that, but like much past that, or like showing of any of the math, like I am so not mathematically brained. I'm the opposite of that. And it's funny because I remember thinking, oh wow, astronomy would have been so cool to go into. Like it would have been so cool to go in and like study the stars. Like when you talk about it, I watched an episode of The Circle. This was a while ago, but there's a girl, a fake girl on there, and she was like she was studying astronomy, and she just sounded so cool.
Oh really?
But yeah, but then I seen the log, pretty much just that, and all the letters and numbers, and I was like, there's no fucking way.
Yeah.
There's no fucking way.
It's crazy
that I'd be able to do that. Maybe that's a limiting belief, but like, no, there's no way.
Yeah, it's like, it's interesting. It's like I've always been more of the math science brain since like, you know, since like high school, really. I was always just so much better at math than like reading, and I couldn't do for the SATs like those reading comprehension sections, and like I still like, oh my god, like I don't read books ever. Like maybe I am going to start, but it's just so funny, like for me, reading and all that shit, no, I just need the hard maths. And yeah, I mean, it's like, I think too, though, like, you know, I've been taking physics classes since I'm in like 11th grade, grade 11, as you would say, which is like age 16 or something. So
what's that?
11th grade.
Yeah.
It's like, what do you mean? What age?
No, because in the States, like if you're
a junior,
12, you're a senior.
Junior.
Yeah, junior. And then what is it? It's like freshman,
sophomore, junior, senior. Yeah. So when I was a junior in high school is when I started taking like physics classes.
I took physics 11, actually.
Physics 11. Yeah. And
yeah, I did. And I thought, actually, I didn't mind it. But I did not continue on. And I did chem in grade 12. And I failed probably the worst class that I've ever failed before.
In chem?
Yeah. Yeah. I got 30% on our diploma.
Oh, 30.
But there's also a few like layers to that, as in just in general, I didn't put a lot of effort into school that year for like other outside contributing factors. And yeah, I feel like I didn't have a lot of support, because actually I went back and redid chem like when I was out of high school, and I obviously like passed it and did fine because I needed it to get into school. But yeah, math's not so good. I like to read and I like to write. So yeah, I'm the person that likes to write.
Yeah, like, you know, in high school, everyone was reading those novels and, you know, Harry Potter, which you're a Harry Potter fan, and like everyone was reading these.
Oh yeah, read them all.
Everyone was like reading these novels, and I was just like, I mean, it's not like I was like in the corner doing math, but I was just like, nah, that ain't me. I'm good on the reading.
That surprises me, because I feel like if you were to get into the Harry Potter world, you would love it. I'm actually very sad that you're not into it, because like I'm so into it, and it's so just like, I don't know. I can't describe anything like a better movie series or book series, to be honest, especially to like correlate with this like magical part of my life.
Right. Well, it's like, you know, I didn't get into real life magic things until later in life, but I do always joke with my friends that like all of my friends are into all of those magical book series, and then I'm just like into real life magic. So
true. I'm into both.
Yeah. That's a good place
also,
to be.
I think, some really interesting synchronicities between Harry Potter and real life magic, which is cool.
Totally.
Yeah. But anyways, you did your PhD, and that was very great. I did my best to follow.
It was the most rewarding day of my entire life.
Yeah, that's pretty big.
It was amazing, and it went so well, and the talk was very well received. And actually, one of the biggest compliments that I got from like a lot of the faculty there was that it was very clear, and that like, you might not think so, but like for I guess other astronomers or my friend Jessie, who's a doctor of the body, not doctor of space, she was on the Zoom, and she was like, actually I was kind of following some of it. No, but the professors in my department, like one of the main compliments that I got was that it was very clear and that it was very well organized. And so, you know, that's always the goal. I think there's some, okay, I'm not even going to try to attribute this quote, but what they say is that the mark of intelligence is not like, you know, being intelligent is not just like saying something that makes you sound so smart that nobody else can understand. Like the mark of intelligence is being able to explain something, like difficult concepts in an easy way. And so I do think that is one of my strengths.
Oh, I'm sure it probably was clear and concise to people that are scientists.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
But it's like, I don't know what log, whatever is, what the math
exactly.
is. I don't even know what the abbreviations are for things, right?
Yeah.
So
no, it's not going to be clear to anyone that doesn't know that. But within the scope, you know, within the people that are able to, within the scope of astronomers. Yeah, I'm so happy with how it went, and it's just like, it was just a miracle, like by the grace of God in these last few months that everything just came together. And I really like hope to use my success story with the way that my PhD finished to like help other grad students. And I already have, like, I was already talking to another grad student who's worried she's finishing like her last year. And I kind of told her, I was like, dude, I did so much towards the end. Like I made it all happen. Like it always comes together, and I actually made her feel a lot better, which was good, because it just, you know, academia, it's just so, everyone is so down in themselves all the time, and just nobody ever wants to make you feel better about things. So that's truly just what I try to do when I come across other grad students, is just shake them and be like, it's gonna be okay.
Yeah, academia is a hard one, especially for you going that far into like a PhD.
Yeah. It's so I'm extremely proud of myself, and I really am just going to be basking in that feeling as I rest and as I kind of focus on the podcast and figure out what I'm going to do next technically. But it was surreal to live that day. I still can't, I'm like, I can't even believe I like did that whole thing. And I like already submitted my thesis, and it was like 200 pages. And I'm like, oh my God, I did that all. And
yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, it was just amazing. So yeah, like I was thinking today for this episode, especially it's kind of like a nice time to record this, because I'm so like, I feel so like on the other side, you know, like I feel like I did this victory that earlier this year, I had no idea how I was ever going to get to this point. Like, is it understatement? Like it felt impossible. Like it felt like I was at the bottom of a ditch and I had no ladder to get out of it, like that it was impossible. And I was like, I have to do this thing. I have to cross the finish line. Like this baby's coming out one way or another. Mm-hmm. But I was like, literally how though?
Yeah. So let's talk about a little bit of your journey to get to this point.
Yeah. So I want to talk about my journey to get to this point, and why, because of my addictions with Adderall, why it was so much more rewarding to get to this point where I finished out the rest of this year in terms of with the Adderall, sober, without this assistance from this substance that I was completely convinced that I 100% needed. And I didn't think I could do anything without it. So yeah, I'm going to kind of like go through this whole thing. And I just want to mention that, like, since I started talking about this more in the last few months, or like starting over this summer, because I think that anyone that has dealt with addiction before knows that it's the best kept secret. Like it's like when you have like an addiction, like that is like you go through all lengths. And when I was dealing with like in the main throes of this, like 2 people in my life knew, about what was going on. Like it's, you find a way, and it's your best kept secret. And but so when I started talking about it more, I definitely found out that it's a lot more common than I realized. And I'm hoping that if this reaches anyone that has been going through a similar thing in the past, or I feel like we could potentially, especially a lot of our potential audience are people that might also have ADHD, I feel like we also we're kind of moving towards this new era of where people are going to starting to like want to be a little bit more independent and maybe break away from pharmaceuticals, but also like, if not, then that's cool too. We're not, I think it's very much to each their own.
This is just your journey and what you were called to.
Exactly. Because so I do have ADHD. I didn't know that.
We haven't really talked about, I don't know if we've talked about this much yet, because we both do. Right. So this has been something that we've really related about, and even probably comforted each other in times. Yeah, like, and I don't know if when you found out that you did, like for me, it's definitely self-diagnosed, and I didn't find out until I was out of college. But like just like learning that I like learned so differently, and like how much I struggled then when I could have just like learned in a different way. I don't know. It's been a big journey, just learning that piece of yourself and learning, I'm like this because my brain like literally works differently than like the average person.
Exactly. It's only been the last few years. Like I did technically get a diagnosis like at the end of 2021 or so, or mid 2021. But yeah, it's like this, it's like you think that you're just like lazy, or you think that you're just your brain like works a different way, or it's just this constant like, why am I like this? And this is very common amongst people that realize they have ADHD like at this point in life, like in their mid to late 20s. And I think what was interesting was that, okay, with the Adderall for me, like I started taking it in like the end of college, but the thing is, there was built-in shame around it the entire time, because one, I didn't know that I had ADHD, because I feel like part of this is, maybe people might relate to this too, because I've talked about this with someone else who is a child of a doctor. So my dad is a doctor. People in doctor families don't go to the doctor. It's like a thing. We just don't go to the doctor. And it also, it establishes this like this belief where you grow up kind of assuming that like nothing's ever wrong with you. At least this is kind of what it was like for me. And I didn't realize this until I had this conversation with someone else a few years ago.
Sorry, do you not go to the doctor because like you just go to your dad? Like your dad just tells you what's right or wrong?
It was like growing up, especially like I was on the tennis team, like I need, like anytime I had like a physical or whatever, like I would just go to my dad and like, and for other things too, like antibiotics, like of like general sickness. It was like, like I did technically like have like a pediatrician and everything, but it was just like this general like underlying current of like, I didn't need to like go to a general practitioner as much as someone else maybe. But it also, this is only things that I unpacked recently. It kind of came along with this underlying idea throughout college and after that, oh, like I don't see like any doctor, like there can't be anything wrong with me. Like there's nothing wrong with me. Like I just have to be like normal, and like I don't need any special medicine or anything, because like I've grown up, and I think what it is like, I've grown up like around a doctor my whole life. Like if there was something that was inherently wrong with me, like I would have known by this point. So therefore everyone else probably is allowed to be on medication because they probably actually have things wrong with them. but I must be normal and I probably just need it and I'm probably just using it to be selfish and to just give me a leg up, even if I may actually need it. And I'm not paying attention to that because there can't be anything wrong with me because I would have known by now. So I must be of a normal class that doesn't need any extra medication or any help to do their things. And this was this underlying belief like for a long time, you know?
Yeah, that makes sense. There's also the piece of like how women are so like greatly underdiagnosed when it comes to ADHD too.
Exactly,
like I think
that too.
We're way better at like hiding our symptoms. And I don't like, this is just generalizing, but there's like inattentive ADHD and attentive ADHD. And I've found that women tend to be more inattentive and men tend to be more attentive. I mean, not everyone, not completely. That's like very like generalizing, but I've like found that kind of, and like inattentive seems to kind of be masked by the like lazy or like yeah,
and that's what you and I both have, the inattentive one, I believe. That's like the
and attentive would be more like hyperactive. And I would think of that as when I was like young in school, and that'd be like the boys that were always acting out and having behavior issues. Like, I mean, there's more to it than that, but they were the ones that were most likely to be diagnosed at that age. But that's with the attentive. It just presents differently. So like now women are starting to become diagnosed more, but it's still not until later in life, like 20 plus, 30 plus, even like women into their 40s.
Right, exactly. Like it's this new realization that people are having. And I feel like honestly, like a lot of it is due to Instagram, because now there's so many more like resources about like, that's probably where like I learned the most of it.
Yeah, me too, honestly.
And, just kind of these really specific traits or these specific tendencies. And I feel like, you know, the differentiation is usually about like how much these things like really control your life. And the first thing that really clicked with me was reading about like the state of executive dysfunction, where you're kind of like the ADHD is taking over your life like a lot more than usual for a period of, for like longer than just a day, longer than I just didn't get anything done today, like to the extent where you feel like you're really having a long period of time in your life where you're just not functioning at all. And like I've had many of those stages in the last few years. And so it's kind of just like, okay, this is it. So basically, as far as like back to the Adderall and kind of my journey with it, it was, you know, I used it to help me in college and stuff. There was, and also definitely like after I graduated college and when I was applying to graduate schools, needed to take like some special like physics exams and everything. And it definitely kind of helped my stamina with long exams and like, studying for that and everything. And, so at this point, you know, definitely was still something that was helping me, and I didn't have there was still definitely shame around it though, because I wasn't diagnosed, but the shame like wasn't huge around it at this point, I would say. But there was always the shame there because I always assumed that like I didn't really need it, but it definitely wasn't a huge part of my life, you know. It was like, and this is the thing, like, you know, a lot of people do that in college. It's extremely common.
I was gonna make that point too, just with like the pressures of academia, how actually common it is, and maybe like not everyone's like talking about it, but I think it's really common in the States. I watched a documentary years ago about how common like taking Adderall is in the States for college kids, and how it was actually becoming a bit of an epidemic. And I mean, and I took it too in school, like not a ton, but I started to definitely towards the end when just for like there's a lot of times I felt like I was in survival mode if it was like the ADHD with other things mixed in. And I'm like, I need to focus and I need to be able to do well on this test. And I started taking it too. And I think that's when I started to maybe realize that maybe I actually do have ADHD, because I'm like, for other people when they take it, I hear them talk about how they clean their house from top to bottom and how they do all this crazy stuff. And for me, it's like, it just made me feel normal. Like it made me feel like I could actually just sit still make me just like sit still and actually focus. Like nothing crazy. It just made me feel like I could sit still, focus on my computer, focus on my notes, and just like, yeah, focus and be present.
Yeah.
And then I was
exactly.
like, and then it was kind of after that I like looked into more ADHD symptoms and did a test and stuff like that. But yeah, there's something to be said too about just like academic pressure, because like really that is the root of it, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, it's one thing if you use it to help you study for a few tests in college and then you kind of go on to your normal life and you're able to function. But then, you know, in my case, then if you stay in academia, especially in a PhD program, that's 6 to 7 years, that pressure never goes away.
Totally. Yeah, if I would have been in school longer than that, who knows? Like, because I started using it like towards the end of my college time. But if I had more years to go, who knows where I would have been.
Yeah. And it's like, I feel like this disconnect existed in my mind, or at least like maybe of the way that I thought of it throughout, that it was like, well, like the only people like that maybe, well, the thing is, I think that my situation is, especially in higher education, is way more common than I even know about right now.
Oh, I think
because
so.
The reason that I thought it wasn't common, because of the stories that you tell yourself in this shame bubble and everything, as I was like, well, everyone else that's in higher education and academia, like if you're going into a master's or PhD program, like you're probably smart enough that you like either don't have ADHD, which is obviously not even the correlation because it can exist in anyone, or like you're probably have your shit together enough that you like won't even need it. It's like, and I, you know, in my mind, everyone just shows up to work every day and can sit down and focus. And I'm like, I'm the only one that can't do that can't just sit down.
Yeah, it's kind of funny you say that, because it makes me think of like ADHD is a symptom. Like it made you feel like ADHD is a symptom of not having your shit together. And I feel like I feel like that too sometimes, where it's just like, no, this is just existing. This is just part of you. It's not good or bad, but it does feel like a symptom of not having your shit together.
Exactly. And it's like, yeah, it's just like our brain works a little bit differently.
Yeah. And so there is a big shame spiral just within like ADHD itself even.
Yeah. Like, yeah, exactly. And so basically I started grad school not using it because I actually didn't have anywhere to get it from at first. And so this is like the really big distinguisher for me was in terms of like in the last few years, when I realized it became a problem, was my ability to do work without it, was how much I was relying on it. Because it's one thing to like kind of use it to help you through a long session of homework or to help you whatever. It's kind of like an extra boost, especially I guess in the way that I was thinking about it, because I wasn't like I wasn't someone that was prescribed it to take it daily like that. So basically, like for the first few years of grad school, like even when I was using it, like I was able to function without it. I was also, you know, maybe it was not as fun, but I was able to write a paper without it. I was able to do my homework without it. And the switch really happened like kind of it was a bit at the same time of like when I had this whole issue with my confidence and with my advisor, because the underlying root of it was just like my confidence was completely shattered. So what happened was like over time, because like it does make you more confident, it gives you this bravado, I don't know what it's like you know, there was a certain like as I went through grad school on this 7-year fucking crazy journey, like my confidence got knocked down so many pegs as I went. Bad experience with advisors, making a mistake, especially with the ADHD stuff. Like I'm so sensitive to criticism, or like, you know, I would go in, my advisor would find the one thing that I didn't do right. I would spiral. And so all these mistakes that I made were compounded and were hurting my confidence, and like I was still kind of doing well, or I was always able to figure it out at the end of the project. But it's like every year that went on in grad school, just like my true, like what I would say is like my authentic confidence, you know, just like whatever, like my soul essence, like authentic confidence that you have before you have an experience that knocks you down, just got like beat down further and further and further. And I was still doing things to kind of show myself like that I was confident. Or a big turning point was like when I passed my qualifying exam, and like I was using Adderall to study for that. Basically, there was something that happened with starting my thesis that I wasn't able to work with the person that I wanted to. And I wanted to switch topics into like the large scale universe. And I wanted to do something like my soul was pushing me in one direction. My soul was saying, you need to do this topic. Like you need to do like galaxy evolution, like the whole universe in your mind at once. I wanted to expand, and I knew that it would maybe take some more time. But basically kind of the underlying energy of what happened was that issues like with my past advisor, like I felt that like my mistakes of the past were kind of almost contributing to things not working out with this other advisor. Like I was being punished for just wanting to follow my soul, or that, I mean, I don't think, you know, it ends up being that it was a miscommunication. I don't think that was entirely the case, but part of the story, because that's really the most important part of anything, right? Whatever story that develops in your mind about this, it was kind of like, and because another thing, part of like what ended up being the words that I said to myself all the time, every time I became more and more addicted to Adderall after this point, was like, I think that this other advisor, this other person kind of like casted doubt on the fact that like I would be able to go into this new topic. Like, cause I was at the 4th year of my thesis, like we're moving to a totally different topic, something that like it would be too hard for me, like that it would be too much for me to move to this topic at this point. It was basically just like, I describe this event because like this period of time in my life, like when I was switching from, I had just gotten back from Australia in 2018, and
I didn't know you ever went to Australia. We've literally never talked about that.
I went to Australia for 3 months. I lived there for 3 months in 2018.
What?
Yeah.
I do not
talked
know
about that.
No. I mean,
Yeah.
I guess you're gonna have to tell me that at another time, but
yeah. Well, I mean, it's kind of, it kind of fits here. Oh yeah. And that was the other thing. Well, in Australia, I had no access to any Adderall at all. And I had a fucking difficult time doing my work. But I guess to backtrack a little, like it was basically like after I passed my qualifying exam earlier that year, which had put all of astronomy into my brain at once. And I was so confident. And after that, I just plummeted into a deep depression from like burnout that was like so like in my bones that I didn't even know that it was there. And I like completely, I like wasn't able to do like anything, like even with Adderall, like honestly. And I also just like, I've had so many phases of this PhD program where I've fallen completely out of love with astronomy, and I've been so disillusioned from it. And for me, like this is like in my soul, this is in my veins. Like this is something that I always have known that I'm going to be doing. And it's like when you're in this position where this is, you know, your whole life and you still have a whole rest of the PhD to finish. And it's like, the thing is, I knew that the love wasn't really fully gone. I knew that it was kind of just like a phase, that it was like a time period that I needed, but like it was weird and it was hard, and I like wasn't excited by it, or I was so burnt out that like all the passion was just hazy and I just didn't know. And so I started coming out of that like about around the time where then I got this opportunity to go to Australia and live there for like June, July, and August in 2018.
Oh, wow.
And it was amazing. And it was like, that was my like reemergence into life. Like I did so much traveling. Like I went to New Zealand, like I got to go visit all these amazing places. And while I was doing research in like astronomy research in Australia, I was, you know, on the science side, like as a person, I was thriving because I was like traveling, and I was living my best like solo travel life. Like I was just going everywhere like alone, and I was just, you know, me and my element is like independent and running and like bopping around. So I was in my element as a person. I was like coming back into myself, and I was slowly starting to like re-merge myself with astronomy and like re-remember my passion. And it was like right when I got back that I was like all good to go. And I thought that I was going to work with this person on my thesis. And I was like, yeah, we're good to go. And I was like, I had just gotten my passion back. Like when I got back from Australia, I was like, all right, I'm ready. Like I had the worst year ever. And then this thing happened where it didn't work out. And I kind of got kicked out onto my ass, and I had nowhere to go. And in terms of like research. So
yeah. So what do you mean? Like, what do you mean you got?
So it was like this person that I wanted to work with. It ended up being a little bit of a miscommunication, but also it fell on me a little bit. The part of the miscommunication was like she thought that I was going to be doing like more legwork about like what my project was going to be, and then like I didn't do as much of that legwork. So there was a lot that fell on me in terms of shame. Like I put together this little proposal, this like 2-page proposal. Like I didn't realize that she, you know, wanted me to put something together more detailed. So there was like a little bit of my fault, but also a miscommunication. And she wasn't able to be my advisor, this person. And but I didn't want to go back to what I had done before because I wasn't as passionate about it. Like I wanted to expand. I wanted to do this new topic of like the whole large scale universe, not just like things, not just like star forming regions in the Milky Way, not just like nearby things. So I was in like limbo for about like a month period of time. And in that time, like my sister really helped me with this. It was like my soul was calling me to like go in this direction and find a way. My soul was like, we're going to find a way to make this happen. And it's just going to be a little more independent, and it's going to look different, but we're going to find a way. But in the back of my mind there was doubt expressed that I would be able to like successfully change gears to this topic, and that I would be able to carry it out well enough. And that stayed in my mind. And so I ended up, you know, getting help to figure out a separate project that I could do independently. And I got a different professor to advise me on it, who was my thesis advisor. And so it worked out, but there was a period of time where I didn't really belong anywhere, where I didn't have an advisor, and, you know, like I kind of talked about this with you this year, like I kind of uncovered a lot of this. The effects of that, like this one conference that we had in like October of 2018, and I was in between, and I was kind of in the stage where I was like, I'm going to figure out my own topic. Like I'm going to do it on my own. But I didn't belong anywhere. And at conferences, all you do is you introduce yourself and you say who your advisor is. And I remember being like so embarrassed and so like horrified that like everyone else belonged, everyone else in the circle. And the conference was at our school too. So like a lot of other people visiting. It was like me around all the grad students, like everyone's introducing, oh, who's your advisor? Everyone belongs to someone. Everyone has an advisor that like wants them to be under their wing. And like I wasn't under anyone's wing. And like,
yeah,
you know, that fucks you up. And it really just amplified these like exile feelings. Basically, I mean, so I think that really the issues with the Adderall like started at this time because it not only was like, you know, doubts were expressed that I could actually do this, that I could actually successfully shift gears into this project, and that I would be smart enough to be able to do it, or that I had enough time or whatever, you know, because I had to switch into a new expertise, even though I would still have like 3 or 4 years to do it. And also there was a big part of me that like thought that this was my mistakes of the past haunting me, that part of the reason that this person didn't want to work with me was because I made so many mistakes with the previous advisor, and that advisor, you know, I got this story, and like this also might be partially true because people do talk, you know.
Yeah, of course.
And so I think there's partial truth to this, but it also, I think I amplified the story bigger. And like, you know, with the ADHD stuff, and like so many these mistakes are compounded, and like when you think that like your past mistakes are like still haunting you, and there's like no way. It felt like I was like, I did all this work, like I just studied, like I just passed the qualifying exam on like my first try, and like I did all this stuff, and like still like these mistakes, like these stupid mistakes that I made, and me not getting along with this other advisor, like that really is still coming to bite me in the ass. Like I can't get past it.
Such a shame spiral.
Yeah, it was like so much shame. So everything kind of like built there. And I think, and so at that point, I finally got locked into my new project and everything was going well. But I had this massive unworthiness thing around my new advisor. Like I felt like I like cornered him at gunpoint and like forced him to be my advisor, like, which is not the case at all. But imagine I did. No, I like, he
get him on. Let's ask him.
Like I felt like I felt so. Well, first off, I wasn't like entirely under his wing. I was doing this individual project. So already, as always, I was like already the black sheep. I was the black sheep. It took me like a few years before I actually felt like worthy enough of his help. Like I didn't feel worthy of his help for a long time. Like anytime we met, I felt like a burden. You know, I also didn't know if he could actually help me, like in terms of the topic, in terms of the stuff. I had all of those doubts. My thesis project was like built on like really, really rocky foundation, really weird foundation. But I was still like determined to do it, and I was still, ready. But it took me a lot to get to that point. So basically, like with the Adderall, like I would say I was able to, I didn't truly notice that I couldn't do work without it until the pandemic. So when the pandemic started, I was about like half a year to 1 year into my thesis work. Oh, wait, just kidding. Sorry. I was already like a year and a half. At that point I'd been working on my thesis topic for like a year and a half, or like a little over a year. And, throughout that time, like I was still using it. I wasn't super confident, but at the same time, I didn't really notice that I maybe wasn't able to do something without it. And so it was like around the pandemic, I remember like I was for the very March 2020, I was quarantining with my parents. I had brought back a whole stash with me, and I was like, this is great, gonna like make so much progress on my research and everything. And 2 weeks into the pandemic, like after I ran out of my Adderall, I like would go to try to do work, and I just like couldn't bring myself to it. And this happened every day. Then it persisted for another 2 or 3 weeks, where it was like I would try, and then I was like, no, like I just, I didn't really, at that time, I didn't really realize what was going on yet, because it was so unconscious. Like I truly, like I knew that it was helping me and everything, but like I had no awareness that there was really a part of me that like felt like I couldn't do work without it.
Yeah. There's probably a little bit of denial too. And just that lack of awareness.
Yeah, exactly. It was massive denial. And so at that point, so that's when I started realizing, but I didn't stop, and I continued this cycle where I continued this cycle for about, so the rest of 2020 and all of 2021, so almost about 2 years after that, I continued this cycle of running out of Adderall. In that time period where if I ran out of Adderall, I would buy my time, or I would just be sleeping nonstop, because I'm coming off of being awake for so many days on end, sleeping nonstop, buying my time, waiting to see when I could get it next, waiting to see like, oh, maybe I could push back that deadline. Oh, maybe I can push it, buying my time slowly by the days, whatever. And then when I would get it, I would be like, great, this is the time. You kind of have the all or nothing mentality. You're like, with this batch, like I'm going to finish this. I'm going to get to this finish line. Not eating.
So it really gave you like a fake sense of confidence.
Fake sense of
Because,
confidence. And also just this idea that I like this was going to be the time, like after this batch, like I was going to be like done. I was going to like reach a new level of accomplishment, which like I made a lot of progress in these times, but it was constantly, I was never fully there. It was constantly just showing up to the, like just getting right to the door, just getting right there. And then.
Yeah. So the way I see it too is like when they talk about like ADHD, a lot of the time there's like this procrastination piece. You can't do your work or whatever it is because we're like avoiding the emotion that the task actually brings up. So if the Adderall gave you that like fake sense of self-confidence that you could tackle it, but then it's like without it, you're facing like your shadows and you just like weren't able to like go there without having that crutch to lean on.
Yeah. And so the other thing was that like, oh yeah, this is the other thing. In this time period that I had already been working on my thesis for like a year, I developed this whole new like avenue of analysis and research to take. And because of the rocky foundation that I just described, I had such a hard time trusting my own ideas. And also I was new to the field. So it's one thing if I had like these ideas and I was in the field for a few years, but I felt like I was just floating on my own. I didn't feel supported from my advisor because I wasn't willing to feel supported by him at that point. Yeah, you know, like towards the end, I actually, once I learned how to accept support from him, but I didn't feel supported by anyone. So I just felt like I was like floating out in the sea. And if I was coming up with these ideas, like I didn't really trust that they were good. I didn't trust that they were valid or so what would happen was then I would be so confident in my new ideas with the Adderall while I was on it. And then once it wore off, all of a sudden I would start doubting all of these research ideas I had, and I would start, and then my sober self would take over and would say, there's no way, like, this isn't a good idea. This isn't a good idea until it kicked in. And all of a sudden I could open my paper back up again and be like, oh my God, this is a great idea. Good job, Alyssa. But it's the second it wore off, I would start questioning my ideas again.
That's exhausting.
So exhausting. And the other, so like, you know, that's like kind of the cycle that was playing out, and definitely the way that once I became so aware that was happening, like that I felt like I couldn't do anything or like do my research without it, I started doing like shadow work around this time in 2020. And I was like trying to understand like what some of these underlying ideas were. And that's where, and I mean, you know, essentially what was happening was that my like baseline confidence and my authentic, like the confidence that you can't be taken away, you're authentic, because the Adderall gave me false confidence. So my underlying like soul true authentic confidence was so knocked down because of the way that my whole thesis started, and because of all the previous things from school and just academia and just being knocked down left and right. Like, it was so knocked down that I couldn't fathom to do my work like in my sober body. And I needed to.
And you also didn't want to be in your sober body. So like you weren't embodied at all.
I wasn't embodied. I needed it to float me above. I needed it to, I wore it as like a bubble wrap to protect me, to save me. And the other thing that was going on under it was like, it was, because lack of confidence, it's also lack of self-trust. So it was like I viewed myself as this fuck up, and I was subconsciously every time saying to myself, we can't trust Alyssa. Like, sober Alyssa cannot be trusted with this task. We have to get her out of the driver's seat. She can't be trusted. She fucks up too much. She's a fuck up. She's gonna fuck it up. So we have to take sober Alyssa out of the driver's seat and put this like confident Adderall version of Alyssa into the driver's seat. Because and the thing is, because that I was like, this is the only, because at the same time I still so cared about my PhD. I didn't even talk about the fact that how this was draining my pockets for years.
Oh, I bet. Yeah.
Didn't even talk about that. Draining my pockets. I was spending all of my money, everything, because I cared so much about getting to this end point. I cared so much about the PhD, and I like figured that I had just gotten to myself in this point where I was like, it doesn't matter. Like I can't do it without it. I can't be trusted. Like I need this to get me to where I need to go. So it was worth all of the money to me, like because I cared so much about this. Like it was worth all of my money, all of my health and everything, that I was just like, this is the only way to get me there. And yeah, it was like I needed to not be in my body. I needed to float above. And as a result, I was not embodied. Well, obviously people I know, like, Adderall curbs your appetite. So, in the time periods where I was on it, where I was on or taking it a bunch, wasn't eating much. And I wasn't sleeping much either. And it's also just like, it was just such a shitty feeling, like that feeling of being so hyped up, like so hyped up that you can't even get to sleep. Like if you tried, it's almost like going to bed with like incredible anxiety. It's like being so up that you can't come back. It is like it's terrifying because it's so ungrounding, because it's like you can't come back down to earth if you wanted to. It's like, it's wild. And like, yeah, I just remember like every time thinking like, oh, this is going to be it. Or also thinking that I was like at a point where I was ready to like try stuff without it. Or I would be like, when you're in that place of such false confidence, when you're on the up from it, it's like you all of a sudden think like, oh my God, I can easily do this tomorrow. I can just wrap this up tomorrow morning and I won't even need to take any of it. And then the next morning comes and you're like, oh, I'm just gonna take it anyway though.
Yeah.
And the other thing too is like just the addictive person, like the addiction, like observing my, just how my tolerance grew so much over the years, and how so the other thing is like when it became, I would say it really became bad in like 2020 and 2021, it was like, I would take it and then I would feel a little bit elevated. But because at this point I was also so aware of like I was so aware that I had so much that needed to be covered, like so much that needed to be bubble wrapped, because it was all coming out, and it was all like, I was seeing it all. And it was finally, I was like, there was so much, like the me under it was like so weak. It was like so weak. I needed like, that's like the best way I can think of it. It was like I needed the thickest possible layers of bubble wrap to protect me while I was doing my work from my own thoughts. Oh yeah, and this was what I was going to say before, like what I realized, the thoughts that go in my head, if I didn't have it to cushion me, if I didn't have it to cushion my confidence, would be like that, almost that other professor in the back of my head, or no, me saying in my head, like, she was right. Like, I can't do this. Like they were right all along.
Yeah.
They were right. This is too hard for me. I'm not smart enough to do this at like the first sign of discomfort, And so it was all about like learning to, like being able to sit in what could be an uncomfortable feeling of like reading a paper and being like, oh, I don't really understand this right now. That feels uncomfortable. Like I couldn't handle that. Like it felt like death to me,
I'm curious, at what point did you start feeling like I can't do this anymore? Like at what point did you start feeling like I don't want this to be my life. I don't want to take this, because you could, if you wanted, you could have probably rode that train all the way to your thesis and like use that to graduate.
Right. And I thought I was going to for a long time. And so I was actually checking in on the situation via like readings, like often starting in 2020, like reading like any psychic readings that I had with someone that I trusted. I believe I maybe checked in with you a few times and others a few times. And basically like the guidance that I was getting up until 2022 was that like, yeah, it's not the best, but like, you're monitoring it. It's okay. It's been okay because it's been helping me. And that's the other thing. Like, I do feel like it was serving me for a period of time, but around 2020, 2021 was when I noticed it stopped serving me. And so it was really like in 2021, it was the deep like downs, the downs of like feeling so, yeah, just feeling really pathetic, honestly, like feeling like I'm in this point where I was like, this is pathetic. Like I've witnessed myself now for so long say like, like live the version of crazy where I say one thing, I do the opposite. Like I've lived myself, I've watched myself live in an illusion, live in like my own world for like years with this stuff, and I'm still lying to myself all the time when I know that this is such a problem. And I feel like honestly one of the things that made me really like want to be, or like, yeah, that made me feel like I can't, like I know that I can't do this anymore, was just like how, yeah, exhausting, and those the not being able to fall asleep and the not being able to get to rest, and just feeling like I just hype myself, I put myself up on this high upper that I'm so ungrounded and I don't know what's going on, and I feeling like you're gonna, like you're so float up that you're gonna just float away from earth. I was like, there's nothing to pull me down right now.
Probably just the toll on your body too. Like it's not healthy to have those cycles of can't sleep for days. You're not eating, like your routine is all over the place.
Yeah, exactly. It was like that. And so I knew that it was bad, but like basically in the end of 2021, like I knew that it was bad, but I wasn't necessarily ready to stop yet. I truly didn't know how. Like I was under the belief that like I needed this to finish my PhD. I was kind of under the belief that like, okay, it's not great, but like I'm just gonna have to keep going like until the PhD, and then I'll stop, But I also knew, I know the way the universe works, and I know that if something's not good for you anymore, the universe is gonna show you, and it's gonna slap your wrist, and it might not look pretty. And I remember like having this conversation with my brother once, like very beginning 2022. He was like, well, you get to decide, like, how do you want this to end, right? Mm-hmm. Like this can either end with me deciding to end, or something worse can happen. It can end with something worse. And I feel like that was a turning point for me, kind of just realizing that like he's right, like
you
how
have control over it.
Yeah, like how this is gonna end, like something is gonna happen with this at some point. Like how do I want it to end? Like do I want it to end on my terms, or do I want to just push it until something bigger happens? So at that point, still after that, I was kind of just going to be like, okay, I'm just going to monitor it. But at the same time, I had been monitoring it for over a year, and I was still doing it, and I was still living out the exact same cycles over and over and over again. So it was January 2022. I had a reading with Jenny. And at the end of the reading, like I asked about it. And this is someone that I really trust a lot, someone that's been my mentor. And for the first time, I guess, in this reading that I had, for the first time in any reading that I had asked my guides about it, the response was, I asked her, I said in the end of the reading, like, I know about this Adderall situation. Like, I know it's probably not, like, it's pretty bad. Like how bad is it? And she said, it's really bad. And I knew that, like, and she said it's really bad. She said she was just getting the direct information from my spirit guides and everything, and from the team.
She was just channeling.
And she was saying it's time to stop. And I was like crying nonstop, because I was like, my first thought was like, I can't, like, how am I going to do it though? Like how, like, I can't even, like, how am I going to finish this? Like how, I can't do it. Like I can't do it without it. Like at this point, that belief was like so strong. That belief was so strong that I couldn't do it without it. That I was like, there's no way. I don't know how I'm going to do it. And she, her response, her like channeled response was like, you're going to be so much more proud of yourself. Like when you're done, like it's going to feel that much more rewarding when you're done with the PhD, and you're going to be happy that you tackled it now. And she was like, you're just gonna do it. Like you're gonna just open your energy to source, ask for help from higher wisdom to just channel through me, and you're just gonna be able to do it. And it was like the realest. So that was that moment. That was the moment that it like actually clicked, or that was the moment where I knew that this is actually the time, that this is actually what I have to do, because it was someone that I trusted a lot, and I trusted that message needed to be delivered, and I also knew that it was the time. And so I had actually just picked up like the day before, like I had just picked up like more for the month of January. And so and so she said, like, after this you should like call someone. And so I called my brother after and kind of told him, and to kind of have someone to help me be accountable with it. But so I said that I would use the rest of what I, now that I know, this was the first time that I would actually approach this saying, I'm going to listen this time. Basically it was like, I heard that felt like her saying it was time, and really that message coming down like a hammer. Like I knew that was like serious. And I feel like that was the moment where I knew. I was like, okay, I actually have to take this into my own hands. Like I can't let it, like, I feel like I just knew something worse was going to happen if I didn't. And I knew that they wouldn't tell me, that this is really the time, like if this wasn't like one of the last times that I could really work on this. And so I used like the rest of whatever I had in the month of January, knowing that it would be the last, and knowing that I'm going, like, kind of bracing myself. So I gave myself a few weeks, this last kind of cycle, to brace myself. And then I stopped in the end of January. And I'm still successful in that. So put it there. The last time I took it was in the end of January, and I haven't not taken it since.
Oh, wow.
So I listened to the call.
Almost a year.
Yes. And so I believe when this comes out, it will be about a year.
So what was your process then after of not taking it? Because now you're having to figure out how to do your work and not lean on this crutch anymore that like gave you self-confidence. It like helped you float above your shame, probably some guilt in there, like a lot of shadow aspects. So like all of these are like hitting you in the face now.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So what followed after I stopped in the end of January 2022, what followed was the hardest year of my entire life. It was, I would say there's a difference between knowing, between trying to brace yourself for it and knowing that there's a difference between, this is why I really needed to confront it. I thought it was going to be a lot easier for me to do work without it. Like I thought that I had kind of braced myself enough, but I feel like this was the difference from like understanding the cause of it. Cause I understood so much, especially at this point, especially by February 2022, when I started trying to do work without it. I like was so aware of where all the sources of these things were. I was like, I knew that, I had anxiety pulling up my paper because I thought that my ideas weren't good. But I also knew that wasn't true. I knew that these ideas were good. It was like all the logical things that technically like could put my worries aside, or that could soothe my worries, like, oh, this isn't really a good idea, whatever, like, or I know that why this fear is only coming from, the voices in my head that said I couldn't do it, but I know I am smart enough to do it. Like all the things didn't matter entirely, because I just met a new animal when I actually put it into practice, which I really feel like in retrospect was physically, like my nervous system, like moving through all, like I understood like the mental body, the emotional body aspect of like these traumas or whatever you could call it that is underlying like what this hurdle was. But it was like I had to meet it in my body now. And that's what I did for 8 months, because everything that I was going through, like when I would sit to try to do work or whatever, it was my nervous system going into this protective mode, going into this overdrive, feeling like I was going to die, feeling like all these things that were such an attack on my confidence and my ego. It was like an ego death every single time I tried to do work, because that's what I learned in this time. And I felt like that was a new demon that I faced. It was like I understood these ideas and I understood what was going on, but like I had to physically like move it through my body, which took a really, really long time, or it took about 7 or 8 months. And I mean, I'm going to talk about like those times in more detail, but I feel like, at least like in retrospect, like when I look back at it now, I feel like that's what it was, because, and when it comes to that kind of stuff, the only way out is through, like I had to experience that, and I had to like
shadow work, baby.
Every time I would like show up to something, or every time I would try to like do the work, and I would try to start so small, or just like with one sentence or whatever, but everything still felt overwhelming. But it was like I had to just feel the insane discomfort of my body. Like my body just had to like feel like it was going to die from me pulling up this research paper, from me like, and this was in the point that I was from like February to like June. Those months, all that entire time straight, for that entire time, February to maybe at least May, probably at least May, definitely a little bit of June, I couldn't pull up my research paper, my topics. I couldn't talk about them without my feeling like I was going to go into a full-blown like panic attack. With like I couldn't even like at night, like I couldn't even like pull up, or if I had like something in the background of my paper with my research, like I had to just like minimize it, because like it was such an attack on my confidence and on my nervous system, really, because it was just like it would just send me into a spiral. What helped me kind of at least exist a little bit in this time period was being a TA and like leaning into the things that I was good at, like, because that actually helped me through like my other depression in 2018 with this stuff where I felt really dissociated. Like I know that I'm good at like explaining concepts to other people, and like so it was kind of like, I would say the biggest source of the trauma was like around my own research, because that was all these things that were wrapped up in my identity and my self-worth, was this new thesis project and like everything that had to do with my own ideas and doubting all of my own ideas so much. And it was like I had no safety net now. I had no safety net of confidence to like go back into, even though it was just going to be fleeting, and as soon as it wore off in a few hours, like the confidence would be completely gone all over again. But it was like I had no safety net of confidence, so it was just this whole topic of my thesis and my work was just this whole blob of like vague nothingness that I couldn't enter. And other topics in astronomy like were a bit more accessible. Like I was able to teach these kids on this subject, or like I was able to slowly learn how to do some work with like the class that I was a TA for, and I was able to, and that helped me, that moved me into the state of feeling like I could function a little bit. But truly from like February to June 2022, I was in a complete state of executive dysfunction. And what I was doing was like, I would just give up on, I would say that I was going to do work, and then I would basically just give up on it. And it was too hard. I was too scared. I would say tomorrow's going to be the day. Tomorrow's going to be the day. And I would just start smoking early in the day, and I would just completely disassociate. I also like in this whole time, like I wasn't going, it wasn't like I was like doing other healthy things. Like for the most part, like I was not going to the gym. Like I was not doing anything else that was good for myself. Like I was just completely trying to do this, but it took every ounce of energy to do nothing. And like, so then
been there.
You're like on the receiving end here of this too, like helping me while I'm going through this stuff. And part of what like builds up this whole like shame is, in this whole time period, like I'm still technically a student. Like my advisor doesn't know what's going on. Like I'm making empty promises to my advisor every single week saying that I'm going to be done with my paper this week, going to be done next week, every meeting.
Well, yeah, because you're meeting up with him every single week, and
more
then
or less,
so it was like what every Friday you didn't have anything to show him for like however many months.
So many meetings in a row where I had to just figure out a way to like cover for myself. I literally had no idea what to say in these meetings because I wasn't going to tell him what was going on. I wasn't,
and that brings up a lot of feelings for you too, because there's also this part of you while you're going through that's probably like, it shouldn't have been this hard for me to transition from not doing it.
Exactly.
And so, yeah, back down just like the shame.
Yeah, I
spiral.
thought like, and so this was the thing, and it just got deeper and deeper as time went on. And in this time period, like time was my mortal enemy. Like every day that passed was like, oh my God, another day. I thought it was going to take me such a shorter period of time to get over this. Like I expected, so that's the other thing in my mind, in the back of my mind, I had like this time frame for what would have been okay. In my mind, I was like, okay, yeah, maybe a week. I was like, oh yeah, maybe a week or two, whatever. But at that point, like you should definitely you should at least be getting something done. Like, so then when that time period passed and I was like, oh, so remember, like, I was saying, it was like every single time it was like, oh my God, it's been 2 weeks and I haven't done anything. Oh my God, it's been 3 weeks. Oh my God, it's been a month. Oh my God, it's been 2 months. And the shame, like the amount that it just piles up, because I completely thought that I would have figured it out by now, because I've never done this before and I had no idea how hard it was going to be.
And you're just should. You're telling yourself everything that you should be doing instead of just accepting yourself and having compassion for what you've been through and where you're at.
Right, exactly.
But you didn't have the capacity to have that at that time, or that was part of your shadow work, was moving through that, and that you didn't, I don't know, you didn't have to have.
Exactly.
You didn't have to have all of your work done for you to still have compassion or love yourself in those moments.
Yeah, I had a really hard time having compassion for myself, or like I would, but I remember like definitely by the time I got to like May, like, you get to a point where like you're fed up with yourself, and it's like I was fed up with myself. When I got to the point where it was like May or June, I was just like, I can't believe I haven't figured this out yet. I'm living the same day over and over and over again. The same, like to the T, like legit of those days, like 95% of those days were the exact same of me saying that I was going to do it tomorrow, that I was going to figure it out tomorrow, of me just giving up at like an hour into the day, just kind of.
Did it ever cross your mind to just go pick up more Adderall?
Honestly, no. And that entire time, I knew that I wasn't going to go back to it. There was, what? Sometimes I get confused with like what happened in my dream versus.
Oh yeah.
Sometimes, because that's the other thing. Sometimes I get confused with what happens in my dreams, because in my, or now I'm thinking there might have been. Because I'm like, wait, was there an actual time that I considered going? There might have been like 1 or 2 times that I considered just like, just one, just to kind of pick me back up, just even though, telling myself a lie.
Get started.
Just to get the fire started. Exactly. Because that's the thing. There was no fire started, and there was nothing around. It was just the lights were off and nothing was coming on. There might have been one time, but I can't remember if it was a dream. I definitely had a lot of dreams about searching for pills, a lot of dreams about a lot of dreams of like finding pills in my car, finding pills on the floor, taking pills from the floor. A lot of dreams about
subconscious really coming through there.
And I've talked about that with like someone else that went through a similar thing with the pharmaceutical pills, and they've actually had similar dreams as well. So it's a thing, having like the pills appearing in dreams. Yeah. But the whole time, as hard as it was, the whole time I knew that I like, Yeah, I would say that is the thing about me. Sometimes, like, when I hit a certain turning point, and like when I sometimes, if on a certain thing, like if I hit a certain point where I say I'm going to do something, I do pretty much like follow through. So it didn't, at that point, it didn't occur to me, or it was not a real consideration to backtrack, because I knew that I had taken it so far. I was so aware of it for so long.
Yeah.
You know, I would say maybe like if I had tried this earlier, like in 2021 or something, maybe. But at this point, I was so aware that I took this the furthest that I could possibly have taken it, that I was like, I used up
Yeah.
all of
And
my time with it, you know.
there's probably the realization that if you started again too, you're just going to be back at square one, because you're going to have to stop again. And it's like the time that you spent was kind of wasted because you would just have to redo it.
Exactly. Yeah. So it was like that too. And I truly like had no idea how I was gonna finish this. Like, because yeah, with all because every day that passed, I was like, oh my God, I have less and less time to finish. I have no idea how I'm gonna finish. Like, I have no idea how. I had not established any workflow. I had not established like hardly any success of doing things. And on top of that, all of the shame that compounded, like, and this is something that I've like just thought so much about recently, and like the shame from when you disappoint yourself, when you can't trust yourself and you disappoint yourself every single day, like, because I didn't have enough compassion for myself at that time, I felt like I disappointed myself every day for like months and months and months.
Yeah.
And it really just takes such a toll on you.
Yeah.
You know? And like and so on top of that, on top of all of the disappointing myself that I did, because I thought I would have been over it by now, I just, the actual practice of it, the practice of doing work, just in practice, I was like, how am I going to do this? I was like, there's literally no way. Like, I don't know how I'm going to do this. So it was really, really bad for a period of time. And I would say the thing that started being the light at the tunnel was like this job that I was close to getting, that started in like June, and it was a little bit more aligned, and it was teaching, and this opportunity came along that kind of ignited like a light at the end of the tunnel for me. And it was the first time that I was able to see a life beyond my thesis and beyond my PhD. Like, in this whole time too, I was just like, I was so like pissed off at astronomy. Like, I was so frustrated. I was so like, I was so frustrated that this thing that like, I was so depressed that I like hated this thing that I also knew was my passion, because it's like the creative art, it's like the artistic process. It's like you have something in front of you that you know that you love, but you also want to kill it at the same time. And it was like that. And it was like, I know I have this passion, but I was so down on myself that I couldn't even be bothered to like do anything with it, or I couldn't, you know, I wasn't showing up. I wasn't doing anything. I was not being anything near like a contributing member of society. I didn't do anything. And I also didn't want to, and I resented it. I was really resentful, and I was resentful in that time, like, of all of academia, because because I felt like they were able to do things that I couldn't. Like, I was angry that like everyone else can just like do work, and that it seems like other people can just show up and do things. And I was like,
I struggle with that too, like in a different way. But...
Right. Yeah, no, exactly. And like, I was angry that like I couldn't do it. It was that I couldn't do anything, that I couldn't figure it out. And I was like, and I was also in this time like watching myself self-sabotage so much, and I was drinking more. I was smoking a lot more, but I was drinking more in this time. In this first few months, I started drinking to numb the pain. And you know the difference when you know the difference between drinking just because, or drinking socially, and drinking because you need to numb out something. And I started doing that
Yeah.
a lot more during the day too, sometimes in this time period. And
I mean, alcohol's never been my drug of choice, but
yep.
yeah.
It's like, yeah, it's, and then it just makes you feel worse because all it does is rob your aura of its energy, really.
Yeah.
It robs you of your life force energy. And yeah, just like kind of also just completely like I was just letting myself go in all ways, physically, like I was just deteriorating in this time, and I was so frustrated, and yeah, and I was really hiding, obviously. And part of what was so difficult about that too was like, yeah, with the meetings with my advisor or anything, I remember so many times like leaving you voice memos, like being so frustrated. Like if I a lot of times I would cancel meetings, or I would like postpone them or something. And I postpone to the following Monday. If they were on Fridays, like to the following Monday, like, oh, I'll definitely get my shit together over the weekend. And then after I get shame about postponing it, or if I manage to actually show up to the meeting, I'll be really proud of myself. But of course, the whole time I'm kind of just navigating, saying like, oh yeah, I'm going to do that soon. Yeah. Like lying, saying that I've been doing X, Y, Z, whatever. And just being,
and then thinking you're gonna get it done before you see him. There's also probably that thing of like, oh, I've moved the deadline. Oh, I'm safe for another day.
God,
so now today I'm gonna escape again, or I'm gonna.
Oh my God, the dopamine release from canceling or from postponing and saying, "Whew, okay,
I know
can
what that's
finally,
like too.
Yeah, like I can finally breathe. Like time to go smoke the day away. Time to just do the exact same thing I've been doing, and like, yeah, and it just built this so much frustration of like, why am I like this? Like, why do I keep having to fuck up like this?
So what got you to the point of where you are now? Like, what got you to move through that?
I would say what got me to, so there was like a light at the end of the tunnel, and that was this job prospect. And also I went to this conference in Paris in July of 2022, and I kind of was able to slowly like present about my stuff and talk about my stuff more, my research more, and I got some more confidence from that.
Yeah, that's great.
But I did kind of like, even after that, I did kind of dip back down into some spirals. Like when I didn't get that job. I didn't get that job, which ended up being okay after the fact. But in the time that I was waiting, I was just like, I was waiting for that job to be the thing at the end of the tunnel that made me go to the finish line, because I still had so much work to do at that point. And I was like, oh, this is going to be great. I'll get this job and then I'll have to finish. And then I didn't get the job.
Yeah.
And I realized that, okay, the way that this has to be is I need to finish for myself. I need to find it in myself. And so kind of around that time in August, I started having some more better days. Like I would say like it really started slow. Like I would have a successful, like, I would leave my phone in the car and I would go to Starbucks, and I would have like a successful work session for like an hour or something, or like a few hours. And I remember just being it was so new to me to be in my body while I was doing work, because I felt so unsafe. And like, yeah, a lot of the times leading up to that in like June or July, if I would try to do some work and I would get a little far, and I would just kind of have a crying panic attack, and I would just need to cry it out. But sometimes you need to do that. And at that point I was listening to a lot of like Kyle Cease, who's a spiritual teacher online, and that's kind of the way that he puts it too. It's like, so you feel like, you see it, you feel it, you cry out a bunch of tears, and after that you kind of have released a little bit of a layer of it, and then you show up again and kind of see what happens after that. And that's kind of how it happened, like in the beginning. Or I just have a really vivid memory of one day where I was trying to do my paper, and it did lead into this whole crying panic attack, and I cried it out. And then I was a little bit stronger the next time I showed up. And sometimes that's how it has to happen in these like early spurts. And I just remember like when I was able to start doing work, like as I'm doing it, feeling in such disbelief, like, oh my God, wait, I'm doing it. Like feeling that knowledge and like the merging of what everything that I was avoiding all of a sudden, like entering my body, and me needing to be like, I'm not dead. I'm okay. I'm alive. I'm doing this. Like I'm writing a sentence. Like this is how like crippled I was, that I needed to like get back to this point. Like when I would be like, oh my God, like I just wrote a sentence, like, oh my God, okay, oh, I'm okay. Like, and also just being in such disbelief that I was actually doing it in the moment. Like, oh my God, whoa, I just did a thing. Oh my God, I'm doing it. And so it kind of went on like that in little spurts. And then in like September and October, I started doing the Kundalini a lot more often, and really regulating my nervous system, because like I said, I feel like my biggest takeaway of the difference between when I just knew about the addiction versus when I actually stopped was like needing your nervous system needs to meet these things head on. And that's why
absolutely
understanding is not enough. And that's why you need to cry it out. You need to have episodes. You need to do whatever you need to do, because like in that whole time from January to October, I like moved through so much physically. Like I moved through so many layers that were on top of me physically, and I kind of finally got to some core that I was slowly being able to be okay with being in my body more. And I started doing more nervous system and more like exercising too. So I started.
Well, I remember in the spring we also had a chat about, I had a friend stay with me that does neuroplasticity.
Oh, yeah.
And we talked a lot about the neural pathways. And I remember that being a turning point too, in that I feel like you started like working out and like just even like making adjustments to like your routine and your practice. And I feel like your feedback was that was helping as well.
Yeah, exactly. Like I started, because, you know, so much of all of this was just me thinking that I can't do a thing, and then just reinforcing that pathway and living that day over and over again. And so, right, once we started talking about the neural pathway stuff, like I did have like a burst of improvement in like May and June, where I actually took that step. And it's all about just taking that first step that you think you can't, and like and building the neural pathway, and knowing very well that it's going to be really uncomfortable to do the first like the first one that your brain is not used to. And I practiced that for like a week, like doing things that basically would surprise your brain, things that your brain would be like, wait, what, really? Like, what, you're not just going to do it this way? And I did that for like a week, and also with like the cold showers in the morning. And so I had like I had these glimpses of, in this like long period of time, I had these glimpses of times that I was able to help myself, or that I was able to see it, but I wasn't able to hold on to it for a long period of time, which is okay. But I had these glimpses that they helped me too. Though, you know, those periods of time helped me a lot. And
even just like when it comes to, if you're not regularly working out or doing the cold plunge, and then you do it, and if you're going to do it, you have to change your mindset to, I can do this when you're doing it. Because I'm not someone who loves to work out. I'm getting better, but like, and then same with the cold plunge. Like, no one wants to do a fucking cold plunge, but like I do that all the time too. But you have to sit and you tell your brain over and over, I can do it, I can do it, I can do it.
Yes.
Versus I know there's times where I would start to do things and I would just tell myself I can't do it. And guess what? I would stop.
Yeah.
So it's changing that neural pathway of actually believing yourself that you can do it. Like, that's just so huge. And our words like have impacted like I guess it's not our words, but like our self-talk.
Yeah, exactly. No, exactly. It was that.
And you were telling yourself over and over that you couldn't do it. So that's what was embedded in your subconscious. So what showed up in the physical, what came to fruition, you didn't do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And like, then I would say then in September and October, I started showing up for myself in other ways. And I broke through that neural pathway in other ways. Like when I started developing my practice of Kundalini yoga, and I would like, and going to the gym, or, you know, just doing other things where you watch yourself show up and you actually can rebuild that trust in yourself, because obviously I had disappointed myself so many days in a row. So I didn't have any of that trust in myself.
Yeah. And then on another level too, those things like really helped regulate your nervous system, as well as even with the ADHD, getting your dopamine hit from like working out, moving your body, and same with the Kundalini.
Yeah, exactly.
And the cold plunges, they're a natural dopamine hit too.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, like once I started showing up in these other ways for myself, and I like noticed a new disciplined version of myself emerging in these different things, it kind of just built up my ability, like, and also just something kind of switched with it in my head that I knew, you know, it was improving over time. So it improved over time, and I showed myself glimpses of success. On top of, for me, the clock was ticking, and I knew I wanted to finish my PhD before 2022. And all of the things kind of just lined up for my new, you know, and also it was like, I had suffered enough. Like at this point, it was like I had caused myself to suffer for a really long time. And it was kind of like, I think I paid my dues with it. And I was kind of, at a certain point, you get sick and tired of your own shit, right? So it was a little bit of that too. It was like, and I moved my location. I got out of Massachusetts and I moved home. And I think that helped too, to have some more accountability around me. So I switched my environment, and I started doing more things to like support myself. And that, in addition to the fact that it had just been, I had gone through such a dark period of time with it, that it kind of, it turned around, and I started showing myself that I could do these things, and then I would, you know, make progress and make more progress. And I also like had people around me like to do some of the bigger breakthrough things that I couldn't do. Like I had my cousin around me, like to kind of submit this paper, to be moral support. And so like I tried to enlist other means of support in that way. And I was kind of just slowly able to chip through these things and like hold all of these things in my body and in my mind, and then to the point where I just like couldn't even believe that I was capable of like doing all this work and finally finishing with my own brain. And like it kind of just happened quickly after that point. But I remember so vividly like the slow process of it coming together, like a few days in August, where I was like, oh my God, like I actually, like I made a edit to this plot that I hadn't made for 8 months. I've been waiting, you know, just like little things like breaking through at that. And it kind of just, and then it got me to this point where I was like, now all in retrospect, especially now that I'm really done with my PhD and like I presented everything and it all went so well, I'm just like, I can't believe that I couldn't talk about this topic in February. I couldn't pull up my paper without like wanting to cry in February. And I managed to just like do it. And I'm so like, and I'm so unbelievably proud of myself. And like, it's just amazing. I can't believe that I did it.
Yeah, it's a huge transformation.
Yeah, and like it was like the way that I feel like what happened is that I had to build up my confidence and my trust from scratch, because it was at zero. Like it was at zero. Like I had no authentic confidence, no authentic trust, and I built it up to PhD level confidence from nothing this year. And it was crazy, and it was really, really hard, but I definitely, you know, see the lessons, and I know why it had to happen.
Well, that was a huge soul lessons and soul evolution for you.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of it too is like about a kind of this karma for me of this stuff with things that have come up in readings before, like the stuff with authority figures. And I know you have this too a little bit. And it's like, I've had this subconscious thing of like, always feeling like I'm going to be in trouble, or that someone's going to stop me or wrong, or that like, I think for me, what I've unpacked is that it's been this big subconscious thing of like, they're going to get in my way. Like these people, like everyone's out to get me. Like they're trying to stop me. Like they're going to make it so that my dreams can't come true. And I was like, that can't happen. And that's why I was like, the only way to my dreams is this substance. And, yeah, it was like this crazy big fear that these authority figures were out to get me, and it totally just like shred my confidence, you know?
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that was quite the journey.
Yeah, so it was a big journey. I'll talk about it, you know, some more directly and indirectly, but
yeah, of course. Well, thank you for being vulnerable about it, because that's like it's a big like life transition, big life transformation.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people that aren't open about stuff like that. So I hope that there's people listening that maybe if you do struggle with addiction or certain things that you can hear Alyssa's story and that can be helpful for you.
Yeah, exactly. I'm hoping that, you know, for me, it was always about the confidence. It was always that like my trust in myself completely got lost along the way. And that's what this addiction was for me. It was about finding my way back to my own authentic confidence. And that is the kind of authentic confidence is something that can't be taken away, you know, that isn't going to be fleeting when something wears away. So just like for me, that was why I knew that this specific substance was a problem for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Journey of trust for you.
Yeah. So
yeah, thank you. Thank you for sharing your story. Do you have anything else to add or that you'd like to tell anyone?
I feel like I wish, if there was anything that I wish I could have done, it would have been, I wouldn't have been so afraid of time, because the truth is, like, you know, it's like I was so against the clock this whole time, and I was not giving myself any compassion because I just thought it was this race. And then it's so funny, like from when I wasn't able to get myself out of this in like a week, I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I already wasted a week. And then come to find out what the journey was meant to be was about 8 months of me really not doing any work at all. And that's what it needed. And it's like, you know, you might not always be able to see. And so at that point, if you had told me in February that it was going to take me 8 months before I was able to really like do my work, like I would have jawed at the floor. Like I would have had no idea. And it's still all worked out. And it's like I needed to go through it in that time. So, you know, it's like you can't rush your process. And I wish I was more compassionate to myself in the time, but I was, you know, you're always doing the best that you can with what you have.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So, you know, it's like it might take some time if anyone's dealing with this right now, because there's also some chemical imbalances there. I didn't realize until recently that there was, you know, a lot of chemical withdrawal happening in my brain.
Oh God,
that took months and months and months, and I didn't really know that was happening, or I didn't know that was a factor of why it was taking me so long. So it's like, you know, there's layers to move through, but they're happening as long as you're trying, you know, because slowly but surely over that period of time it happened for me. So yeah, I think that's about it. And I'm very relieved to be on the other side. And yeah.
Well, thanks for sharing. We're very proud of you. You've been through a lot.
Thank you. I hope that this might be able to help anyone. And all right, so I think we're gonna close off this episode.
Yeah, I gotta eat. I'm gonna fall over.
Thank you for listening, everyone.
Like, comment, and subscribe.
Subscribe for some more vulnerability. All right, thank you, everyone.